Okay, the meat of this episode. This one will be of interest to some people. The prospect profile. The top, depending on who you're asking, the top defenseman available on the board, in most people's opinion, Jamie Drysdale.
Who?
Do the Red Wings... Yeah, just this guy. I thought it was Drysdale. No, I'm kidding. Jamie Drysdale. A lot of people have him as the Red Wings' hopeful pick. A lot of people are not even interested in having him as the Red Wings pick. But nonetheless, he is in the mix of the Erie Otters and the O. Brad, take us away on Jamie Drysdale.
All right. So, the top defensive prospect to anybody with some common sense. Everybody knows what Jamie Drysdale is if you've read any rankings in the last year, because he's in the top 10 of all of them, top 5 in a lot of them. He is an elite skating offensive defenseman with an above average defensive game for a defenseman of his size, because at least on Elite Prospects, he's listed at 5'11", 170. So he is roughly my size, a little taller and a little lighter, so he ain't big. But he's got a really, really high hockey IQ. An amazing transition player. That's probably the strength of his game, truth be told, is getting that puck north from south, whether that's skating it up himself or using his outlets and making the right pass at the right time. So, the summary there is Jamie Drysdale is a jack of all trades defenseman. You can put him in basically any situation, and at worst, he will be competent. Now, here's the thing. Is Jamie Drysdale an elite number 1 defenseman for your team? Is he a number 2 or is he a number 3? Because there's debates for all of them. I tend to see him in the NHL as a really good number 2. I don't have super high confidence in his offensive game translating to be elite in the NHL. Now, again, this isn't meant to come off as negative, because I think he will have a very good offensive game in the NHL. But if we're talking about a top 5 pick, especially as a defenseman, you want the word elite in there. And I don't know if that is there for him. Again, it's jack of all trades, master of none is not a fair statement because of how good his transition game is. And I think his defensive game will get there. He's just so smart. There's no way, even with his stature, I think he'll still be elite defensively. But when you look at his offensive totals in the OHL, he is his point totals are way behind where an Evan Bouchard was at the same point going into his draft year, and so on and so forth. He was close to a point per game, which again for a 17-year-old defenseman in the OHL is still incredible. I don't have him in my top 5, but I think that has a lot to do with just the strength of this draft more so than a knock on Drysdale.
Well, he didn't have the luxury of playing for a London team that's routinely loaded with NHL talent.
That is fair.
I think I can't remember where Erie finished last year, but I'm sure it wasn't in the top half of the league. And he played in the Ivan Holinka tournament last year, right?
Yes.
Was that 2 years ago?
He played in the World Juniors this year.
Yeah, so that's a lot of hockey and a lot of minutes for a guy who's supposed to be the top D-man on his junior team that's getting shelled every night. So that could probably, all add up to lesser offensive numbers, but all the highlights, I haven't had the luxury of watching him in person, but all the highlights I've watched and just general footage, his skating is incredible. His forwards, backwards, lateral, north, south, east, west, it is so good. And he has the framework to succeed at the current NHL. This is how the defensemen are starting to look these days. They're good skaters and good with the puck. So it all depends if he can add some strength. I think I hate to say guaranteed, but in my opinion, he's guaranteed top 4 defenseman on any team. And just really depends on his development, but I could definitely see him being top 2 on a team, perhaps even a franchise level player, but it's hard, defense are almost like goalies. They're a little bit voodoo and they take a long time. So it might be a while to see what you get with Jamie Drysdale.
Yeah, in fairness to Jamie Drysdale, I'm going to probably break him down, or the profile of him down in two ways. One, him versus the field, and then two, him versus what I think the Red Wings should pick. So these two guys kind of covered virtually everything there is to know about him. And the first thing that stands out to me watching Jamie Drysdale is what Evan just mentioned, which is his skating is elite in every way. It's not just his top end speed. It's not just his, edge work. It's not just his breakout speed. It's not just his east-west or lateral movement or backward skating. Like, this guy stands out with his skating in every facet of this game. He is a natural skater. Like, you do not see a lot of defensemen who move like him, and that is so advantageous. And he translates that into what Brad mentioned, which is an elite transition game. This is the guy who can get the puck out of your zone. This is the guy who can get the puck safely through the neutral zone, whether carrying it himself or making an excellent pass or a read of the play. And this is a guy who can dish the puck out in the offensive zone, be a true number one power play QB. And that last line is what kind of gives me a lot of hope for Jamie Drysdale, where even if he doesn't turn into a true number one defenseman, which I wouldn't write him off for, you're at least looking at a guy who should be your power play QB and be a super effective guy. I mean, we just got done talking about Mike Green. Was he the most complete defenseman in the world? No, but on the power play, the guy knew what he was doing.
He made a career of it almost.
Absolutely he did. He got paid well for it too, and he put up some huge numbers for some teams. Even with Detroit, like, those offensive flashes were there, especially earlier on. So I see a lot in Jamie Drysdale, and he's never who I recommend as, the preferred Red Wings pick in the Wing Wheel podcast opinion, but that's not a knock on him. That's more of what I view the Red Wings needing, and that's more of a view of the field around him. It is rare for there to be so many potentially high impact forwards available in and around where Jamie Drysdale should be taken if you're the Red Wings at number 4. Most other years, he would be right up there. I talk about 1A and 1B with like Raymond and Rossi or Perfetti. Most other years, Drysdale would be the 1B in my mind. The Red Wings have a glut of, not a glut is rich considering how bad this team is, but right-handed defenseman is not a need for the team right now, especially after taking Moritz Seider last year. And yeah, you take best player available, but at some point, especially when you have a team with so many holes, you can't just keep plugging the same one. So if Lucas Raymond wasn't there, if Cole Perfetti wasn't there, if Marco Rossi wasn't there, if maybe even like a pipe dream, Tim Stützle or Quentin Byfield could even be there, then yeah, we'd be talking about Jamie Drysdale at 4. But for me, I just view the forwards as having so much more potential impact. That said, if Yzerman goes off the board, which like it's not off the board for the top defenseman to go number 4, I will not be upset. People talk about Sanderson a lot, and I think very highly of Sanderson. If I was an NHL coach, he'd be my favorite kind of defenseman. The guy plays both ends of the ice extremely well, but he is so responsible defensively. He is so smart defensively. He always makes the right play defensively, and I think that's underappreciated because it doesn't show up on stat sheets when people talk about defensemen. But you want to know what sets Jamie Drysdale apart? This guy has a mind for the offensive zone and to move the play and create plays like no other defenseman in this draft. And I think that's what puts him a full tier above Sanderson. And like Brad said, it just takes a little bit of, just look at it. Just look at how naturally it comes to Drysdale. And that's why so many people have him ranked so much more highly. So I think the world of Drysdale. A lot of other drafts, I would want him for Detroit. But considering last year with them taking Moritz Seider and considering who's going to be available next year in next year's draft, those top end defensemen, I don't think that's the right pick for Detroit at number 4.
Totally agree. And this is where I think Ottawa can make out like bandits with that number 3 and number 5 pick. At number 3, they get the coveted forward that they want, and if they need to plug holes on the back end, they'll probably have Jamie Drysdale sitting right there. Mind you, I don't think they make any bad picks at 3 and 5.
No, there's none at all. Someone on Reddit today asked, or like I answered a post. They're like, who's your preferred pick at number 4? And it comes up obviously like twice a day. And I said 1A, Raymond, 1B, Rossi, 1C, Perfetti, 2, Drysdale. Like you can't not go wrong. And if you're Ottawa, how do you go from Mark Stone among many others and Erik Karlsson leaving your team, and then all of a sudden you get Quentin Byfield or Tim Stützle and then Jamie Drysdale? They could go off the board, guarantee themselves Drysdale if they really want that, and still walk away with at least Lucas Raymond or Marco Rossi at number
They owe
5.
us at least that.
Please, Ottawa, please. Sure, we've talked a lot of shit about your team over the past couple of years. Well, we've talked a lot of shit about a lot of teams over the past couple of years.
To be fair, we talk shit about everyone. So really, it's all even at the end of the day.
We talked the most shit about the Red Wings, so take that to heart, Eugene Melnick. Any bad things we said about you, we probably meant it. Stop terrorizing those poor fans.
Red Wings, Leafs, Boston. That's the order. And everybody else is after that.
What do you guys think about, how would you react if Drysdale went to Detroit?
Meh. I mean,
that'll be bad for the live stream.
Yeah, it's.
I guess we'll turn it off now.
I mean, I from a skill set standpoint, I don't hate Drysdale at 4. I could absolutely see the argument, but I mean, you couple that Drysdale literally played the position where the Red Wings are the strongest in their pipeline. Like there's nobody at forwards, and they have a ton of defensive prospects, especially at right side. So that, I mean, you never draft based on need, but still, and man, I really like Raymond, Rossi, Perfetti, Holtz. It's hard when the Red Wings need forwards so desperately, and there's going to be 4 or 5 there that you could absolutely justify. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'd hate it just because I do like Drysdale so much, honestly, and he'd be the best defenseman in the Red Wings pipeline. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Sure.
The second we draft him, so you can like Mo Seider, you can like McIsaac, Johansson, whatever. Drysdale's better. So that's obviously a massive plus, but I mean, is Drysdale that much ahead of Seider? Offensively, yeah. Defensively, he's probably behind Seider. And then if you compare that to any of the forwards that they could draft, would they be the best forward prospect on the team? Yes, by a country mile. So it's, again, never draft on need, but I will not be able to get that out of the back of my head.
Yeah, the only way I would they have to be very confident that Drysdale can drive some offense early in his NHL career to make it worth it, because if they take a forward with their first pick, they'll be driving a lot of offense, and a lot of it will go through them sooner rather than later. So I would still be happy. I don't think there's a way I could not be happy, unless Stützle or Byfield are sitting there and we pick somebody else. Then I might lose my damn mind. I'll be going out Ryan's window. I would be perfectly happy with that pick, but yeah, when you think about the number of right-handed defensemen we have in the prospects pool, that it's not a position of need. And with all of the high-end forwards sitting there in the draft this year, it's a hard sell for me.
I have, obviously, we've talked a lot about what our favorite picks would be, and those would be in I'm happy. Different degrees of happy. Like Byfield or Stützle, I'm thrilled. Raymond, Rossi, Perfetti, I'm very happy. That's my happy tier. My not overjoyed, but also not upset. I think Drysdale would fit in there. I think Holtz would fit in there. My disappointed, but can't be too upset tier would include a Jake Sanderson type, or maybe a wild pick like Lundell. And my absolutely brain melting, I don't know how to feel about this is just too much chaos tier would be Yaroslav Askarov. Brad, I think Brad's head would actually steam. You'd see steam coming out of his ears on that one.
A good chance, honestly.
And then you just have me shrieking, "But Carey Price!" at you for the next 4 years.
And if
until Askarov's the starting goalie.
If that's what helps you get through it.
Well, there's less than 2 months now to the draft, so I'm sure we'll find more ways to hypothesize our anger. Okay, That is our review of Jamie Drysdale. We are going to revisit him as a likely, because he is one of the potential Red Wings picks, so we are going to be revisiting it in a larger conversation down the road. But that is our prospect analysis. Thank you for tuning into that. Until next week, until next episode when we have another one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.